In the UK, the problem of nightmare neighbours has never been worse.
This man's going to kill me.
Oi, you were assaulting me!
My husband had blood all over his face and I thought he was dead.
1 in 5 of us has been at war with next door.
The truth always comes out. Never forget that, scumbag.
Where flaring tempers can turn home life into a living hell.
I wouldn't spit on him if he was on fire.
Coming up, battling pensioners in the Scottish Highlands.
Nearly taking my head off and getting closer.
Murderous threats in Devon.
I'm gonna do you. You're dead.
And not everything in this garden is rosy.
And all of a sudden, he's at me like that.
When looking for an isolated, idyllic beauty spot, there couldn't be a better setting than rural Kinross near Fife in Scotland. In 1986, retired hotelier Terence Doyle and his wife Jean found the perfect home overlooking the stunning Loch Leven.
I refer to it as the tropics of Kinneswood. We get nice scenery from here and we're off the beaten track. I think in most of our lives we've lived in the country and enjoyed peace, quiet, tranquility and good views. And so we rather like it here.
14 years later, this wealthy pocket of the country attracted retired businessman David Poole and his wife, and they moved up from Berkshire to the bungalow next door.
My wife was adamant she did not want to look at pylons, and we happened to take one look at the view and decided, fantastic.
It didn't take long for the Doyles to extend the hand of friendship to their new neighbours.
We were the people that were doing the giving the approaches and inviting them for morning coffee and so on.
Yeah, when we first met Terry, perfectly friendly. We went to dinner with him and his family one evening. We had nothing in common.
Occasionally there would be a reciprocal to go to their place, but it was never like being at home.
For the next 10 years, the two families enjoyed a relatively harmonious relationship until 2010, when the construction of a new driveway by David would change things forever.
Initially, the boundary between the two properties would have followed that yellow line straight up there.
When David's workmen started on the drive, Terence was soon on the scene.
And I said, gentlemen, sorry if I'm ruining your day, but I don't know who you are and you're on my land and I don't know what you're doing, but I don't want anything done.
I freely admit I'd forgotten this 3-metre pathway, half of which was mine, half of which was his. I'd totally forgotten about that bit.
But David had a solution, so work on the driveway could continue.
I said, well, look, the guys are here. I'm going to need the drive, whatever. If I've encroached on your land, yes, I still need the drive. And you can have a slice of land in compensation.
They informally agreed on a land swap, and Terence set his sights on a slither of land in a field that ran behind both properties.
I would never have settled a deal in a handshake, but in the absence of any other means there and then, that was it. And then he reneges on that within a day or two.
I got to think about it. I said, you are asking for too much, Terry. You know. We eventually got to the actual plans and discovered that, in fact, I had not encroached in any way. So I said, deal's off.
That was disappointing.
The new driveway wasn't only a constant reminder of his lost land, there was another problem. As Terence's garage was to be a casualty of David's new construction.
They then slope it this way to make sure that everything that lands there shoots off. You could guarantee every day that it rained, the garage flooded. It was obvious he was not going to do anything about the water.
It's the natural slope of the land. I've done nothing. I believe the agricultural ruling on water runoff or flash floods and that sort of thing is that you have to handle the water that comes onto your land.
We had lived there since '86 and the garage was always tinder dry, always.
One day, When Terence saw David trying to nail his back gate shut, he went over to confront him.
I said, what's going on here? You can't have access to the field, he said. I said, I don't need access to the field. This is our piece of land right here. And he's got this 3-pound mash hammer in his hand. And he swung the mash hammer at me like so. And I kind of dodged that. You've got this grimace, and the teeth and the eyes popping again, and shades of, try that again, you're banded, and I'll really get you, you know. And it came again at me. Come on, I'm saying. And again, the mash hammer came at me. This was vicious, like that. And I said, you must be out of your tiny head.
He stated that you swung the hammer in his direction.
No, not true.
Terence called the police, but they decided not to take any action. But the situation soon started to take its toll on his wife, Jean.
I don't even feel safe with the doors locked because you don't know what that man's going to do next. You know, I keep saying to Terry, if this doesn't stop, this is going to kill us. And I mean that.
Coming up. Threats and counter-threats in Devon.
And I said, if you do that, I'll kill you.
And shady goings-on in suburbia.
Just thought, what is this, gangster tactics? Is this gangster land now?
Nestling in the picturesque Devon countryside, the small village of Rowborough seemed like a dream setting for Tina and Steve Webb when they moved there in 1998 with their children Sarah, Charlene and Matthew.
It's beautiful because we've got obviously the moors further out, and that's why we wanted to move out this far. And we've got our local pub, which is very nice up there as well.
The neighbourhood in itself is absolutely great.
Yeah, it's like a proper old village, isn't it? Always saying hiya, and you have a little yap and that, and then toddle on to do your day's work.
Finding themselves in such a close-knit neighbourhood, Tina decided to set up her own child minding business.
The house that we're living in is ideal for it, as we've got a very large garden, climbing frames and things like that for them.
Tina went to great lengths to make sure their house was secure for the children.
We bought the CCTV 10 years ago for child minding. And if the children was playing and fought, you know, if they fell, they would be able to, we'd have evidence of what happened. But recently we've had to use them for my neighbour up the road, the Browns.
In March 2008, Richard Brown and his partner moved in, just a few doors up from the Webbs. Stephen and Tina initially had no contact with them, but it would only be 3 weeks before things started to go wrong.
One day Charlene come running in the door, petrified actually, she looked quite shook up, that the man up the road, she said, was shouting and swearing at her. Richard Brown was stood on the end of the drive, shouting that he's got nowhere to park, and when I actually looked up by his area, he had his parking space there.
The Webbs had grown accustomed to parking at least 5 of their vehicles in the spaces in front of their house.
Steve heard the shouting and he come running down and said, what's going on? And Mr. Brown started shouting that he's fed up with the parking around here and he's had enough. So Steve said, oh, you know, don't talk to my wife and child like that again, like, you know. And he said, oh look, I'm so sorry, he said. Can we shake hands? I'm not in a happy mood. My son got injured in a boxing ring and it's quite upset me. He said, and I had no rights really to take it out on you, and can we shake hands and apologise? And so Steve said, well yeah, but next time you can speak to us in an appropriate manner.
The Webbs hoped that was the end of the matter, but it was their son Matthew who was to bring relations between the families to the boil.
Matthew went to get some shopping. On the way back, as Matthew approached outside the house, Richard Brown called him up.
I heard a lot of shouting and screaming. I looked out the window to see if that Richard Brown had had my son Matthew and was punching him around the head and around the face, really aggressive. Matthew was trying to hold his head down like that and push him away, and as Matthew was pushing away, Richard Brown was grabbing him more and punching him more to the face and head. He was punching him underneath, lifted his legs off the floor, really punching him. He was saying to Matthew, he said, I'm going to do you, I'm going to hammer you, and you're dead. And then I ran downstairs, ran out, and then as I ran at the front door, he threw him on the floor like a rag doll. I come out the house, because I seen Matthew being beat up, and by the time I got to this point, Matthew was on the floor by then. We tried to push Richard Brown, but he just didn't want to let go. He just wanted to punch. And I said, what are you doing? What's it all about? And he said, I just hate the and that's exactly what he said.
Richard Brown claims the fight was self-defence, when Matthew attacked him and made threats towards his family. Richard was cautioned by the police. Tina Webb felt there could have been other reasons for the fight.
He was just going on about Matthew. Matthew fancies his girlfriend. I said, no, that's not right. We don't even know your girlfriend. I called Matthew down because he was upstairs. And I said, Matthew, do you fancy this man's girlfriend? He said, no, I've never seen her. He said, I don't know what you're on about.
On Boxing Day of that year, relations between the two families reached a new low, when the Webb family were walking home from a night at the pub.
As we walked past the post box, coming down towards Richard Brown's house, he said, I'm going to smash your cars up, burn your house. He said, you'll be in bed one night and you'll burn to death with your family, and threatened me with all that. And I said, if you do that, I'll kill you.
Richard Brown denies the abuse and claims he called the police after he heard the Webb family shouting threats and seeing Matthew with a baseball bat.
Matthew had a baseball bat and he said, he's not going to hurt me again.
Matthew feared for himself.
And he had the bat to protect himself. And Charlene, my youngest daughter, said, he's not going to hurt you, he's not going to hurt you. And she grabbed him because she was feeling for him. And she brought him in, and the basketball bat went back in the car, and the police seized it from the car.
Richard Brown claims Tina also forced her way into their home. Matthew and Steve Webb were arrested and cautioned, though neither were actually charged.
It was just the heat of the moment, wasn't it? Mm. That was it. There was no fighting or anything.
The things we've retaliated to is through things they've made us retaliate to defend ourselves.
But that retaliation was soon to get out of hand again. In a Scottish beauty spot, two pensioners had locked horns in an ongoing battle over a disputed driveway. The row now spread to where the fence line should be.
We'd written letters to him saying, we're going to have to go to arbitration, aren't we? And we are saying here and now, if you fail to do this, we will remove the fences that we think are in the wrong position.
When he first started coming in the gate and telling us what to move, I was shocked that anyone could make these demands, that we had lived here all these years. Well, what can I say?
Gave him suitable time, and I started removing it.
And it didn't go unnoticed by his neighbour.
Mr. Doyle comes tearing up the drive at me.
And it was over here that he picked up a bracing bit. He was part bent and had a mean look, and he changed it from one hand to the other, and he was then trying to circle me. I could see that I was going to be getting the benefit of this just at any moment, and he would keep swapping and back again, and I reckoned it was actually coming for me. I was definitely going to catch it this time, when a neighbour stepped out and shouted, "Stop now." And he straightened up and he stood there thinking his day had been ruined.
He says that you came at him with the bracing bit.
It was a terrible experience, and I was glad that my neighbour came to my rescue. I don't think I might have been here today. This was definitely going for me.
Following the incident, Terence Doyle called the police, and this time David received a caution. It didn't take long for the two men to collide once again, and this time Terence accused David of deliberately parking his car to block access to his driveway.
They had the Volvo parked right here, When I called him to say, David, you've got your car parked down there, so what? And just as blocking our way.
I have parked once out there to make a point.
Sole purpose was to obstruct our access and entrance.
Guess what? The police come around and say, Mr. Dawes says you can't get out. Well, excuse me, if he hadn't got such stupid gates, he could use the full width of the drive to get in and out.
The Rolls goes out fairly frequently. It would have been a tight job for it to try and get in there. We were having a very important guest and meeting with us here. I was going to collect them and they would be joining us here for morning coffee or a late morning coffee, and we're then going for lunch.
Oh, I've got Lord so-and-so coming. Please leave your car out of the way so he can get his Rolls Royce in to join my Rolls Royce.
Luckily for Terence, the weekly bin collection forced David to move his car, and Terence seized his moment.
It was my intentions to fetch my bicycle and to park it here and to say, sorry, this spot is taken. I then had to put a nail through its pedal so that it couldn't blow over, and so it stood there. And it stood there for at least a week.
With the bicycle nailed firmly to the pavement, it was impossible for David to return his car to the same spot. Although Terence won the parking battle, the war was far from over. Rita Grutendorst and her husband Peter live in the suburb of Sidcup in southeast London.
I've lived here 20 years now, and I am well known, especially to the council, because I'm a community campaigner and a community activist.
And Rita is proud to stand out from the crowd.
I do think I'm very, very different from the kind of people who live here. I'm not like the other people who live in this street. So you're coming up to my house, so this is it. I'm sorry it's a mess.
Rita's a keen gardener, and unlike other residents in the neighbourhood, she likes to pack her garden with a rich variety of plants and shrubs.
I am a free spirit because I do love nature, and I do believe that the world is there for us to cherish, not to destroy.
Rita had lived here for 14 years, when in 2008, Paula Lote and her partner Derek Wood moved in next door. And according to Rita, the first time they met, Paula Lote offered to buy Rita's house.
And I said, oh, that's great. You know, if you pay me what you've paid for next door, I'll start looking. But nothing came of it. She sort of stiffened up when I said, if you pay me what you paid for next door, and that was the end of that forever. And sadly, things only went from bad to worse.
Soon after, Rita received a letter saying Paula Lote and Derek Wood wanted to build a 2-storey extension on their home.
I opposed the plans because if I had allowed the plans to go ahead, they would have built a bigger than average extension.
Due to Rita's objections, Paula Lote didn't receive permission to build her extension for over a year. By then, Paula changed her plans, deciding to modify her garden instead.
You know, I saw the lorry loads of decking arrive, and then they put decking and fencing right up against my house.
And Rita claims the installation of decking ruined the peace in her garden.
The nail gun, for a week, that's all I heard. It was unbelievable. Chung, 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 chung. There's just tons of decking.
Once the decking was finished, Rita wasn't impressed.
I noticed that the gap and my border that used to be there between my lean-to and next door, that had gone when they put their decking and moved the fence over. So I lost part of my garden straight away.
Rita claims that her neighbours moved the boundary fence right up against her conservatory wall, stealing several inches of her garden. This is something Paula Lote strongly denies.
When I said to her on the Sunday, excuse me, I'd like you to remove this fence and decking off my land, and she went, good luck with that.
But Rita was determined to stand her ground.
Maybe little, but I'm not a pushover. This is just piracy. I tried everyone, including the council and councillors, to try and help, and nobody wanted to help.
Rita and Peter decided to try and prove that Paula had stolen part of the boundary, so they asked a surveyor to visit their home and conduct a laser land survey.
So I've got the survey here, and it shows that there's at least an 8-inch gap. So this survey proved that they encroached with their fence into my property, which they treated as if it is nothing. But I find that it is just a land grab. So.
Paula Lote and Derek Wood deny ever moving the fence and insist it has been in the same position for at least 15 years, since before they moved in. But convinced a strip of their land had been stolen, Rita and Peter wrote a letter to Paula and Derek, outlining their grievances and including the results of their survey.
After I posted the letter, I just hoped that we could have a resolution and, you know, put an end to all the nonsense that had gone on. A couple of days later, after I posted the letter, I went to my letterbox, and there was an envelope with my letter torn up inside. Just thought, what is this, gangster tactics? Is this gangster land now? You know, it's intimidation. It's like a slap in the face.
Coming up, the police clamped down on Rita.
I've been sent to arrest you. Arrest me?
And Tina finds herself behind bars.
I was very scared. It's the first time that I was ever put in a cell that evening.
If your home life is sometimes a bit of a nightmare, our competition could really make a difference. We've got £10,000 to give away. Imagine what you could do with 10 grand. Maybe you could take the family away for a well-deserved holiday. Or perhaps it's time to spruce up your home and reclaim the garden from the wilderness. Whatever it is you need, Channel 5 wants to give you a helping hand. So for your chance to win, call 0904 161 9955 or text WIN to 85545 or post your name and phone number to WIN, PO Box 7557, Derby, DE1 0NP. Calls cost £1.53 from a BT landline. Calls from other landlines and mobiles may cost considerably more. Text costs £1.50 plus one message at standard network rate. Lines close at midday on the date shown on screen and 3 days later for postal entries. For rules, go to channel5.com/win.
Watering can at the ready.
In Sidcup, Rita grew endorsed to clash with her new neighbours, Paula Lote and Derek Wood, from the moment they arrived. And Rita claims they laid decking and moved the boundary fence 8 inches onto her land.
My garden's gone. The spirit of my garden has been taken away because I just feel they can do as they please. And they have done.
Paula Lote says that she once caught Rita trying to smash the boundary fence down with a hammer. Her partner Derek Wood made an audio recording of the argument that followed.
Rita, I've asked you to stop damaging my fence.
I've asked you to get it off my land.
Rita, it's been there
Stop
for 15
stealing my
years.
land. Stealing, cheating,
How
and
have
lying.
I damaged
You've
or
lied
moved
and
your
lied
fence?
and lied. Oi, get it off my land.
But it wasn't just the alleged land grab that disturbed Rita. After 3 years of conflict, one spring morning Rita heard Derek trimming the shrub that divides their front gardens.
So I go outside to tell him, stop that. Then saw my diverter pipe lying there on his ground.
Paula Lote claims Derek was merely repairing the dam pipe, which is shared between the two properties.
He's going, oh, I'm videoing this. And I said to him, why have you stolen my diverter pipe? Give that back. Give it back now. If you won't put it back and won't give it back, I'm going to get it.
2 doors down, neighbour Jerry Wooder was working in his back garden when he heard shouting.
Most of it was coming from Rita, yelling at Derek. It's not the first time I've known her to sort of moan about these things.
Went to take my diverter pipe, and all of a sudden, before I can even reach the pipe, he's at me like that, at me like that, and I'm flat on my back. and he's on top of me and I can't get up. I'm trying to pull myself up, I can't get up.
I saw that they were struggling and he pushed her on the ground. She tried to get up, was pushing quite hard and fiercely on to keep her down, and she hit her head a couple of times. So I jumped over and pulled him off.
He just ripped this chap off me, who was on top of me, and got me away.
And that was it. It obviously quietened down. And I came back out here again when I saw Derek, and we were here, just here, when he said the ladies just attacked me. And he had this cut on his face.
Their video of the alleged fight no longer exists, but Paula Lote and Derek Wood insist that it was Rita who had attacked Derek. And shortly after the clash, Rita got a knock at the door.
And I went downstairs and there was a young policewoman and a man standing there. And I said, "Oh, thank God you've come. I thought you were never going to come and do the investigation." She said to me, "Oh, I'm sorry, we haven't come to investigate. I've been sent to arrest you." And I went, "You're having a laugh. Arrest me?"
Paula Lote claims police told her Rita behaved like a wild animal when she was arrested. After 12 hours at the police station, Rita was charged with assault and criminal damage and released on bail. She was due in court the following month, but the charges against her were dropped because of a lack of evidence.
It's a malicious prosecution. If there's no evidence and you haven't done anything, it's a wrongful arrest and a malicious prosecution.
But Paula Lote maintains that Derek suffered cuts during the attack. Their neighbour Jerry Wooder has his own views on the situation.
Well, I think the run-ins that people have had, they've actually learnt that it's not worth really chasing these things or making too much of an issue. Just walk away from it. Here's a lady who could create hell for you if you're not too careful.
For Rita, it's her garden that has suffered the most.
I used to have a working, flourishing garden, but I don't use this garden. I can't use the garden as I used to use it before these people arrived and started all the tricks. My garden now has not seen me for 2 years. I just have lost heart.
So in a final attempt at peace, Rita proposed that Paula and Derek pay her £5,000 to compensate for the loss of the land.
This is not a perfect solution. It would not make up for what I've gone through, but £5,000 would at least pay for my laser land survey and all the hassle. It would go a little tiny way to pay for what she's done. I'd like her to be reasonable. I'd like her to be a good neighbour, if that's possible.
Rita and Peter are currently awaiting a response from Paula Lote. But it seems unlikely that Rita and her surrounding neighbours will ever see eye to eye.
Well, she's certainly eccentric, there's no doubt about that. If she quietly just got on with things, then things would be very peaceful. Because I think this is a quiet street, it's neighbourly. I wouldn't actually put her into how you would describe neighbourly.
I couldn't care less about these neighbours. They're not my sort. They're not my type. Unfortunately, I've never had good neighbours in this road. It's full of zombies. It's full of inbred village idiots.
In Kinross, the last 4 years has seen Terence Doyle and David Poole embroiled in a row over a slither of land that ran behind both properties. Once promised to Terence in exchange for part of his driveway, David and his wife had then withdrawn the offer, but Terence still believed it was his.
I would say it has hijacked our lives because Terry can think of nothing else. I'd just like it to end. I really would like it to end. I'd really like him to move away and go wherever he can and give the rest of the people, the neighbours here, peace.
But peace wasn't on the cards. When Terence decided to do some improvements to his house and left an old fireplace on the disputed land, things were about to get violent.
We heard that box go whomp.
Whilst Terence believed the old fireplace was on his property, David believed it was on his, and tempers quickly flared.
He then said, did you push the firebox over? I said, yes. Why did you do that? I said, it displeased me.
And he looked over his shoulder and came there in one move right around, teeth glaring, and got me with his vicious left hook.
Next I knew, I had a thwack in the back. Probably a kick.
There was only one hit, just one hit in the whole session, where he actually got me in the side of the head. Suddenly I'm caught from behind by his glove fist under my throat. He puts his leg behind me to unbalance me, and he whumps me onto the ground with all his force. And it's not as though I fell onto a feather mattress. I've fallen onto all these branches and bits of wood and such, and they're not very comfortable.
I defend myself as best I can. I end up on the ground. He ends up here. His glasses like this. Sorry, like that. Looking a bit stunned.
Once again the police were called, and Terence was taken to hospital for his injuries.
Where's this cracked skull and displaced jaw? I don't know what else, you know. Burst his eyelids or something, did I? Burst his eardrums.
It's not that he would go up there and want to fight with someone. He's never fought with anyone, but he has.
Lies, lies, lies.
The police charged David with assault, but when the case went to court, he was found not guilty. Though according to the sheriff, neither man was acting in a manner fitting to his age.
I worry for Terry, for his sanity, frankly, with this man, to be told that he hit him first. And I keep saying to Terry, give him what he wants and let's get on with our lives. What do we need it for?
But the men felt differently, and to avoid any further unwelcome encounters, David took advantage of a Scottish law which stops people from trespassing on your land.
I bought the caravan because you cannot legally enter someone else's property if there's a caravan on that enclosure.
The caravan remained on the field, but not for long.
One night in January, and it was pouring with rain, I'm told, and it ended up a pile of junk.
Who will be the number one suspect now? You know, what next? Am I to be blamed for sort of thing?
Neither the police nor the fire brigade were able to prove if the blaze was accident or arson.
What do you think happened?
I think somebody set light to it.
I can assure you I had nothing to do with the burning down of that caravan, nothing whatsoever.
To this day, it remains a mystery, but the fiery feud between the two men was far from over. The rural calm of Roborough in Devon was shattered when Steve and Tina Webb came into conflict with their new neighbour, Richard Brown. A destructive chain of events had already been set in motion. The Browns complained to the police about Tina's son Matthew's treatment of their teenage son. At the same time, Tina received reports from Ofsted about anonymous complaints regarding her childminding business.
There are ongoing issues regarding this family with the police. Their language is disgraceful in the presence of the minded children. Frequently displayed aggravation and threatening behaviour towards their neighbour. I do think he is attacking us through Ofsted's, and anybody knows Ofsted's is the people you've got to answer to.
Then the police paid Tina a visit.
They wanted us to take our CCTV cameras down because it was not right for the Browns. They felt intimidated in their privacy, and they said it's not right that you've got the camera going up towards their property.
Tina moved her cameras, but soon both families were lodging complaints about the other to the police. Tina claimed Richard was harassing her at her door, and his partner had damaged her car. Richard says Tina was constantly harassing his family, and he had evidence. Both families deny the other's claims. Finally, Tina was issued with a police information notice in relation to allegations of harassment, warning her to have no direct or indirect contact with the Browns. But then in February, she discovered a Facebook post by Richard's partner.
2 complaints and 1 enforcement action letter. Tut tut, they must have plenty of haters. Ha ha. So then she's put, this has made my day. Whoop whoop whoop, yippee.
Tina couldn't help herself and took to Facebook to post a very public response. Ignoring her police information notice, she wrote on Richard's partner's Facebook wall and messaged her online friends.
I did say that they are a nasty family because of what we've had to go through. I couldn't believe what happened next.
Within a few hours, there was a knock at the door.
It was 2 police officers asking for Tina Webb, and they just come right through to the kitchen at me, and I said, what do you want me for? What have I done? And they said, we've come to arrest you. I was very scared. It's the first time that I was ever put in a cell that evening, and I was sat there for 5 hours wondering what I've done.
Tina was not charged for the online posts, but instead, the courts upheld the Browns' complaints that she had actually verbally abused them on several occasions. Tina was convicted for harassment and was issued with a restraining order.
I was given a 2-year suspended sentence to stay away from Richard and his family. If not, I would get anything up to 5 years imprisonment. And I was given 50 hours community service. I had the tag around my ankle, which was on here, for 2 months. 7 o'clock in the evening, I had to be in, and I wasn't allowed out until 7 o'clock in the morning. So I was just like a prisoner in my own home, really. Couldn't even go to an Halloween party with my grandson.
Coming up, there's no end in sight for the Battle of the Borders.
He's Lord Doyle, who can bully anybody. Not me, mate.
Don't forget about your chance to boost your bank account by a massive £10,000. You could take a family holiday or spruce up your home. It's completely up to you. To enter, call 0904 161 9955 or text WIN to 85545 or post your name and phone number to WIN, PO Box 7557, Derby DE10NP. For rules, go to channel5.com/WIN. In Kinross, the Doyles and the Pauls have been locked in a bitter land dispute for the last 4 years that's put one in hospital and the other in court. To stake his claim to the disputed driveway once and for all, Terence had a trick up his sleeve.
We've simply marked the boundary and reminded a certain party as to whose boundary it is and where it is.
I was away and was informed that the spike had appeared. So I said, well, okay, we'll sort it out when we get home.
He's tried every trick. You've seen him with his little bottle jack trying to jack it out, and he had an engineer in to cut it out, and the engineer was stood right there, and I said, I'll just wait until you actually damage the galvanised metal on it, and then I'll go call the police. The guy unplugged his little Black & Decker and went.
He's Lord Doyle, who can bully anybody. Not me, mate.
It stops him from driving up here and parking here. It stops him from driving. He sometimes has 4 or 5 cars parked in the field where they're all looking on at us. Not that we pay any attention. I don't know where he gets them from or how he gets people to come and stay with him, but he's a very unsociable guy.
David was now hoping a civil court case would be the solution.
Look, I'm putting it in the hands of a specialist and a court, because all this argy-bargy is getting absolutely nowhere. Where should the boundaries be? Nobody can tell me.
But finding these answers wasn't cheap.
We're very close to £50,000 cash that we have given to this to keep this man from coming in here and taking our land that we have occupied since we bought this home and had no reason to doubt it at any time because the fences were all here when we came.
The final court hearing has not taken place, and the bitter feud continues to this day.
We bought and paid for this. If I got careless and let it all slip, I mean, I have a son and we have nephews and nieces. Are they more entitled to it than Poole is? I would think so.
The intrinsic land value is nil. I'm fighting it. Because it's not right.
I'd just like it to end. I really would like it to end. I'd really like him to move away and go wherever he can and give the rest of the people, the neighbours here, peace.
In Devon, what started as a neighbourhood dispute and bad feeling between two young men resulted in childminder Tina Webb receiving a restraining order for harassment. But Tina was soon struggling to meet the conditions of that order.
One day I was driving in the village and the children start waving and I started beeping and waving back and like laughing. And the next thing I get told that I broke my breach of harassment because I was doing this. Richard Brown phoned up and said that he felt intimidated because I was beeping and laughing in my vehicle whilst passing his house.
In April 2013, she was summoned on 4 counts of breaching her restraining order.
If I do anything to Mr. Brown again, I've only got to shout to Steve at the front, and if he thinks it's for him,
and he feels threatened,
and he feels threatened by it, then I'll be took to court and put to prison for up to 5 years.
In October 2013, a judge at Plymouth Crown Court disposed of the case, and Tina was bound over to keep the peace. The bad feeling between the Webbs and Richard Brown continued to simmer, and 9 months later, Steve received an alarming voicemail.
It's on my phone here.
Hello there, Mr. Webb, this is Mr. Brown. I'd just like to ask you a question as to why you're videoing my 11-year-old daughter on the way to school this morning. As you can imagine, she was very upset by this, and I'd like to know why exactly you're doing that. Thank you very much.
That evening, I was in my van, and Richard Brown come up to me and put his hands up against the door, which made me very uncomfortable and very nervous. I said, I've not done nothing, I don't want to talk to you, go away from me. He said, I want you to come out here because I'm going to kick your head in. And I said, just go away. He said, no, come out here. He said, because I'm going to do you right now.
The Webbs reported the incident to the police, and Richard Brown, who denies the harassment in the van, was issued with his own police information notice.
I'm glad it's being done, but it should have come a lot sooner.
With both families receiving police notices, things quietened down on the street. The police offered the families mediation, but the Webbs walked out. Richard Brown told us he has always been willing to solve the dispute amicably, even though they have been seriously affected by the harassment, and the Webbs have caused his family immense stress. Following the 6-year dispute, the Webb family's lives have also changed forever.
We shut the business down basically because of all the aggravation we've had. There's only so much you can take before breaking point, to be honest.
Next time, neighbours clash on a Glasgow estate.
He started running down that garden path, frothing at the mouth.
A garden wall in Wiltshire gets the makeover from hell.
It stands out like an eyesore. It's almost like seeing the Great Wall of China from the moon.
And a conservatory starts a boundary war in Bedfordshire.
I wouldn't spit on him if he was on fire. There isn't a swear word strong enough.
That's pretty strong. Tomorrow night on Channel 5, the effect of payment caps and the bedroom tax in Benefits, Babies and Jail at 8 o'clock. But next tonight, a nightmare for any business facing the repossession guys. New Can't Pay Will Take It Away follows the news headlines in just a moment.
In the UK, the problem of nightmare neighbours has never been worse.
And he whomps me onto the ground.
My husband had blood all over his face, and I thought he was dead.
1 in 5 of us has been at war with next door.
The truth always comes out. Never forget that, scumbag.
Flaring tempers can turn home life into a living hell.
He had a baseball bat.
Is this gangster land now?
This time, the nightmare continues as we return to the neighbour disputes that just won't go away. In London, tempers continue to boil over the extension from hell.
Don't put your shit up against my fence.
In the Cotswolds, a conflict over money lent between friends gets dangerous.
Hi, is that Helen?
The engine was racing. She proceeded to drive straight towards Richard.
And how a love for badgers and music meant these people's neighbours wanted them to leave town. But have they?
I mean, we had a police helicopter here one night at 3 o'clock in the morning. What's that all about?
Some say money is the root of all evil, and in a Cotswolds village, a decision to lend money to a neighbour has ruined the lives of 2 families.
I'd like to ask Robert where my money is.
What they've done is wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong.
£50,000 of our life savings, our security in our old age.
And all because we were helping somebody. We thought we were helping somebody.
This dispute divided the community, but no one could have predicted what happened next.
Can we have a few words with you, please? Helen?
We would never have, in our wildest imaginations, believed that we'd be in a position of a police constable sitting in our home taking a witness statement. And Richard being the victim.
The story began in 2011 when Peter and Angela McSweeney had a visit from Robert Brown, the son of their neighbours. He had a proposition.
Robert's proposal was that he needed the money to start up a new business in Stratford-upon-Avon.
He wanted to borrow £50,000 for this new venture. The £50,000 came as quite a shock.
He assured us that he would pay it up as quickly as he possibly could. He shook hands with Peter and then off he went.
The McSweeneys had known Robert's parents, Peter and Helen Brown, for years, and they were more than just the people across the street.
When we first moved in, the Brown family were very friendly.
Helen Brown came over socially on many, many occasions. Was always sort of ringing me up and saying, is everything all right? Don't forget you can always call on me if there's anything needs doing. We trusted each other, absolutely.
Unbeknown to the McSweeneys, Robert Brown had also been to see Claire and Richard Mayman, who lived on the same road. They'd also agreed to lend Robert money for the Stratford Cafe, £70,000 in total.
There was a trust between us as decent people.
Both families believed they were making a good investment because Robert already ran a thriving cafe business in their village.
Robert Brown took on this business, called it Fox's, and we just watched him and the business work very successfully.
He drove a nice car, and we thought, well, wow, this is good for him.
But they made a big mistake. The Maymans and the McSweeneys trusted Robert's parents, so they weren't concerned when there was no proper paperwork.
These were personal, very personal arrangements with people that we trusted.
And the decision to loan money to their neighbour would come back to haunt both couples 18 months later, when they learned the Stratford Cafe they'd invested in was in trouble.
We were advised that the bailiffs had gone in.
But the Maymans and the McSweeneys, each family still unaware the other was involved, were walking headlong into financial disaster.
What they have done is wrong, totally immoral. They continue as though nothing has changed.
When it comes to arguments between neighbours, there's one issue that trumps all others: noise.
The nail gun, it was unbelievable. Chung, 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 chung.
Councils receive thousands of complaints about noisy neighbours every year. Neighbours like rapper Elvis Torresinza. When he moved to an East London estate in 2010, Elvis's pumping music drove his neighbours berserk.
It was severe bass. The bass was quite bad and it was horrendous music. The way he portrays himself and the way he acts makes me think that he is threatening. And that's why I've actually never gone round there.
But a year after the courts ordered him to hang up his mic, has anything really changed? He may be named after the king of rock and roll, but Elvis's music of choice is rap.
Situation messed up. Was mum's words telling Martin getting dressed up?
Ominously for his neighbours, the aspiring rapper wanted to record in the comfort of his own home.
Got myself a job and worked there for a few months, saved up a little bit of money, and I started buying my equipment.
Elvis was soon creating songs and uploading them to the internet in a bid to get noticed. And he certainly got noticed.
Sometimes it wouldn't start till 1 a.m, so you'd think, oh yay, peace and quiet for one night. And then suddenly, when in bed, it would start and you'd be like, what?
Would you ever start the music at 1 a.m?
Never.
Elvis's neighbours began to complain, and he soon had the council on his back.
I opened up the door and he must have said to me that he must have had a complaint from a neighbour that I was playing loud music. Obviously, I turned down the music at the time.
But not enough to satisfy his neighbour.
Bass was a big problem, obviously, because it made your walls vibrate. Even in the bath, I could still hear the bass and feel it when my head was under the water. So even that didn't block out the sound.
The complaints kept on coming.
Probably 3-4 weeks later, I got a letter from the council saying that I had been causing a nuisance all through and I'm basically a music terrorist.
Not everyone on the estate thought it was a problem.
Well, obviously people are going to hear the music, so it probably vibrates through the walls, but it's never that loud, you know what I mean?
But after 82 complaints from other neighbours, in 2012, Elvis was hit with a noise abatement order.
I really didn't see the need to go to the council and start pointing fingers like they did to me.
But that didn't stop Elvis, and in September 2013, he was fined £1,000 after a court found him guilty of breaching his order. And the council made it clear what would happen if Elvis broke the order again.
I had to stop playing loud music, otherwise they was going to come to my house and take my equipment.
But for Elvis's neighbours, the nightmare wasn't over yet.
I was clever than them, you get me?
Coming up, the build from hell still causing all-out war between neighbours.
He's threatened to blow our house up. He's threatened to put bricks through our window.
And the Somerset woman who caused a siege gears up for action again.
If it does happen again, I'll be out there on the front line.
In East London, rowdy rapper Elvis had been ordered to turn down his music. When he continued to ignore warnings, the council took drastic action.
So as I'm walking in, I opened up my front room, walked in, and literally everything was gone. All my computer that was there, that was gone. I had a studio mixer over there, that was gone as well. And my mic stand was gone, I was standing over there.
But Elvis had anticipated their move.
Obviously the council must have thought, you know, they took all my stuff, but obviously they didn't take my music recording stuff. Luckily, you know, I was clever than them, you get me? I had moved my equipment to my brother's. I took my speakers, moved my monitors, and I took my mixer.
On this occasion, Elvis had stayed one step ahead of the council, and he soon returned his gear to the estate. but it would only be a matter of time before his musical misdemeanours caught up with him. It's now more than a year since Elvis was found guilty of breaching his order. And on the Dagenham estate, there's no rapping, no beats, and no Elvis. It seems he just couldn't give up his musical habit, and on the 13th of May 2014, Elvis was evicted for noise nuisance and rent arrears. His neighbours finally had the peace and quiet they'd been craving.
I lead a much happier life. Now I can go to work, come home, relax and go to bed when I want.
Elvis was unavailable for comment, but it seems this time he really has left the building. The huge cost of moving home means record numbers of people are choosing to build loft conversions or extensions instead, but few consider the impact on their neighbours. When North London homeowner Tariq Ahmed turned his house from this into this, the neighbours on either side were up in arms.
He had no intention of listening to anything we had to say, and as far as I was concerned, the only people that would be able to stop him were the courts.
4 years on, I'm absolutely sick and tired of talking about it.
Tony and Veronica Martin lived on one side of this three-way dispute. Next door to them was Mr. Ahmed, and on the other side of him was the detached home of Helen Corlin. Initially, the three neighbours got along well, but then Mr. Ahmed announced a plan to improve his home.
I got an email saying that he wanted to dig within 3 metres of our property and said that the builder would be sending me some plans.
The first Helen knew of the plans was when Mr. Ahmed turned up at her door holding a magazine.
On the front of the magazine was a white double-fronted house, which he then told me he was going to proceed to make next door into.
It was clear that Mr. Ahmed's plans involved greatly increasing the size of his 3-bedroom end terrace to the rear and to the side.
In his own mind, he was going to make this into an enormous palace that should have been sitting in an acre of land.
Much to Helen's alarm, Mr. Ahmed's grand design meant his extension would go right up to her boundary wall.
I was asking how I was meant to get in and out of my front door and my back door without any danger.
Concerned by his ambitious plans, Helen went to talk to her neighbour, Mr. Ahmed.
I tried to explain to him that we had a right to lights, and that the fact is that he would be blocking all our light out, and so he had would not be able to do it.
When we first met the neighbours, Mr. Ahmed declined to tell his side of the story, but according to Helen, his reaction to her objection was far from friendly.
Mr. Ahmed's reply is to start swearing and cursing and threatening, and that's when I said to him, do ourselves all a favour, we will do this the legal way, and then we won't have to talk to each other.
Helen told the council that Mr. Ahmed's plans infringed her right to light, but they told her it was a private matter.
I realised that they were going to pass these plans, and it was a nightmare beginning to brew up inside of me.
Within days, the building work had begun, and Mr. Ahmed's neighbours were worried by what they saw.
They weren't what I would class as builders. There was no health and safety, there's no high-vis jackets, no hard hats, chaotic.
At the centre of it all, directing the work, was Mr. Ahmed himself.
He would strut around like a peacock. He's got the voice, and he'd make sure that everybody heard it.
He just walks around so much like a cross between Del Boy and Ali G.
As Mr. Ahmed's extension grew, Helen's worst fears about light were realised.
You never seem to get the sunshine or the warmth into the house anymore on a nice day. You sort of always feel like it's winter.
Her once light and airy house was now shrouded in darkness.
Every day now, I can't even come into this room without having to put lights on.
And the distance separating the two houses was just a few feet, or the length of Helen's mum's walking stick. The work hadn't been signed off by building regulations, and in Helen's opinion, it was unsafe.
The war's so dangerous, and we're just left living this nightmare, aren't we, Mum?
Yes, definitely.
They weren't the only ones. On the other side of Mr. Ahmed, the Martins were about to get a nasty shock.
And the first thing I immediately saw was a huge crack, which literally went right across the whole hall. It just looked like it went on forever. So I come into my daughter's room, and the crack went right along the top and all the way down the window. I was absolutely furious. I went running down the stairs to Mr. Ahmed and his builders, who were outside talking to my wife, and called them all in. They just went, oh. And I said, well, you've got to be, what have you done? Just said, well, we'll fix it. But he just couldn't get the magnitude of the whole thing. And it was just no remorse. It was like, so what?
And it seemed Mr. Ahmed also had some help with building techniques from an unusual source.
The work was being carried out by Mr. Ahmed and his mates using self-help YouTube videos.
Well, that's pathetic. It's as simple as that. That's the first I've heard that he used self-help videos to build a house.
No, I knew he went onto the internet. He told me he'd searched on the internet.
I find it absolutely astonishing that I'm gobsmacked for that.
It was a terrifying situation for both sets of neighbours, and little did they know the nightmare was far from over. In Britain, 13 million households own a pet. But while we adore our animals, our neighbours don't.
For hell's sake, they're birds. They're going to make noise, It's not like they're cockerels.
From yapping dogs to clucking hens, animals are a factor in over 20% of neighbour disputes. But in one rural village, it wasn't the animals that were the problem. It was the woman trying to protect them.
I'm quite proud to have a caution for badgers. Not a problem.
In summer 2013, Meg Sunningdale made herself unpopular with her neighbours when she took up a campaign to protect badgers from the government cull.
People would drive along here mouthing evil bitch.
With most of the village against her, she reluctantly decided it was time to go. Meg has always dreamt of countryside life due to her love of all living things.
I feel as if I am part of nature. Everything I do, everything I plant, has to be beneficial for wildlife. And this is my fruit cage, which has all been shared by ducks, and the ducks have been very safe from foxes here. I do feel that animals need a spokesperson. They don't have rights. This area I feed the pheasants because I try to keep them off the hill where they're shot.
Why do you love animals so much?
I don't know. It's like asking somebody why they believe in God, isn't it?
Soon after moving to the Somerset village of Withycombe, one type of animal gained a particular place in Meg's heart.
In my life, I hadn't seen a badger, but I had badgers on my doorstep. I felt so privileged because not many people in this country ever see a live badger.
Meg encouraged the badgers to her garden with food and developed a bond with them.
They knew my smell, and if there's anybody else here, they wouldn't come near the door.
But Meg was about to get a nasty shock. The government were concerned about the spread of tuberculosis in cattle, and as badgers are thought to carry the disease, they decided to embark on a cull.
We just didn't believe it. We couldn't believe that human beings would be prepared to do that.
Meg wanted to make an issue about it, which she definitely made an issue.
When she discovered one of her neighbours was allegedly involved in the cull, Meg did something that would have dire consequences for the village.
I just couldn't believe that he would be part of a badger cull, and my natural instinct was to name and shame this person.
Meg put a poster on her gate naming the alleged shooter, and within days the press had picked up on the story.
Couldn't believe that someone would be that, I don't know, stupid to actually do that. It was unbelievable.
With his name all over the press, the alleged shooter was left fearing for his safety.
I mean, he was that frightened for his family, his wife and children, that he moved them out of the village.
Animal rights protesters began to descend on Withycombe, determined to disrupt the cull.
This is the gate that a lot of protesters would have had to open and walk through to this Withycombe Wood. Our main aim was to be a presence, and if we were there, the shooters couldn't be. They weren't allowed to shoot too close to a person or a public footpath.
But it's the cover where all the protesters were kicking off. Then they used to congregate under that big oak tree. They didn't normally start until probably 2:30 in the morning. Just give you time to get asleep. Started off with the lights, whistle, air horns. I don't need them out there keeping me awake every night. Quite loud.
Yeah, it needs to be.
Meg had started a siege, and there was no sign of peace returning to Withycombe.
What they thought they were achieving, I do not know. But what they did achieve was to certainly piss us off along here.
Still to come, road rage in the Cotswolds as the dispute hits a terrifying new level.
She purposefully drove the car in a straight line towards Richard.
And after a nightmare extension next door, neighbours fight back.
And by the end of that day, I had made the phone call and I had started the enforcement action.
In Somerset, Meg Sunningdale was besotted with badgers, and in an effort to stop them being shot, she'd brought scores of protesters to her village. But her actions caused outrage, and by the time the cull ended 6 weeks later, Meg's reputation in Withycombe was in tatters.
I became nervous, I became more self-conscious, I didn't really want to be seen.
So by September 2013, she decided to up sticks and leave the village.
We will have to move, you know, we can't stay with a really bad atmosphere, can we?
At the time, some felt it was a case of good riddance.
She's come in, stirred it all up, caused plenty of trouble, and move off.
But 1 year on, Meg has decided that she's not ready to say goodbye to the charms of Withycombe just yet, and her house is now off the market. Although all is quiet in the village for now, further culls are scheduled for the area, and Meg's always been very clear about her stance on the issue.
I will certainly do my utmost to prevent another cull ever happening again, and if it does happen again, I'll be out there on the front line.
In the Cotswolds, Peter and Angela McSweeney had loaned £50,000 of their life savings to neighbour Robert Brown, and were reassured by his mother Helen that their money was safe.
You'll get your money back, even if I have to sell my house, was the promise she made.
But 18 months later, the McSweeneys had a visit from Robert's father and soon realised their investment was in peril.
So I opened the door, and Peter Brown was in quite an agitated state. He said, we've got problems. He said, the bailiffs are in at Foxy Brown's. So he said, I need some money.
The McSweeneys refused to give the Browns any more money and demanded a formal meeting.
I needed to check legally to see that we had a contract really, which was a valid one. Robert stood up in unison with his father. It was as though they were acting out a play.
And said, if you take legal action, you'll get nothing.
Over the road, the Maymans were equally worried about their money.
We hadn't got legally binding documents. What chance there was of getting our money back? Minimal. I think then the realisation of what we'd got into hit home.
And living in the same village as the Browns, they had no escape.
This is Robert Brown.
That is Robert Brown.
One evening, the stress of the situation boiled over. Wanting to show the Browns how she was feeling, Claire parked outside their house and sat there revving her engine.
I suppose all my anger was being roared out of this poor car's engine. Long enough to make me feel a bit better, long enough to see Robert's parents running from window to door to door to window to try and work out who and what was going on the drive in front of their house. It gave me a small release. It was like an elastic band snapping. Something had just made me very, very angry.
By now, the Maymans and the McSweeneys had discovered each other was involved. But their hopes of getting any money back were dealt another blow in March 2013 when Robert Brown went bankrupt.
Borrow, borrow, borrow at somebody else's expense, and then go bankrupt and be absolved of all your responsibilities to your creditors. How fair is that?
But things were about to take a much darker turn. With Robert bankrupt, ownership of the Broadway Cafe appeared to pass to family friends.
Come on, we better hurry, otherwise they'll be gone.
But in November 2013, Peter McSweeney and Richard Mayman were in the village when they caught sight of Helen in the cafe's car park.
We decided that it might be a good opportunity on the spur of the moment to actually have a word with her.
Hi, is that Helen? Helen, Richard here. We're making a programme.
Yeah, good luck to you, Richard.
What happened next couldn't be shown until now, and it changed the course of the whole dispute.
It all happened in a fraction of a second.
Helen, can we have a few words with you, please? Helen?
Richard again attempted to ask her whether she would be prepared to say something concerning her son's death. I thought that she was departing from the car park and that would have been the end of it. But instead of exiting the car park, she proceeded to drive straight towards Richard. And she left the braking to the very last moment.
She's laughing, so she's obviously very happy about things.
And as she departed from the car park, she was seen to be smiling, smirking.
Yes, it's a big joke. What fun.
Who would go out laughing, drive out laughing, after an incident like that?
In the immediate aftermath, Richard and Peter were left reeling.
To think that the situation has got to the stage of her driving her car at me it leaves me speechless. We'll just have to see where this now leads. It's very unfortunate. The whole episode has been very unfortunate.
You're a brave man, Richard.
Helen's car had made contact with Richard's leg, and although he was unhurt, he decided to report the incident to the police.
And they decided that with the evidence and the witnesses that were present, that there was a strong case for actually taking it to court.
And any hope of a resolution between the families was now long gone.
The forthcoming court case did nothing for our feelings towards the Brown family. The animosity was almost palpable.
In North London, Tariq Ahmed's neighbours were up in arms over his imposing extension.
It makes me feel totally claustrophobic, and I literally feel like the walls are coming in on me.
Cracks in neighbourly relations were growing by the minute.
As soon as Veronica saw this, she screamed because she thought the whole house was going to fall down.
For both sets of neighbours, enough was enough. And when Helen refused to allow Mr. Ahmed to put scaffolding up on her property, the gloves were off.
Mr. Ahmed has threatened me to a degree that he has told me I should watch my back.
Helen wasn't alone.
He's threatened to blow our house up. He's threatened to put bricks through our window.
Mr. Ahmed claims these were nothing more than empty threats, but despite the intimidation, Helen refused to give up.
We did a right to light survey, which was paid for by my insurance company and their legal team, and we took it to the court, and from our local court it was sent straight up to the High Court.
After 2.5 years of misery, it seemed she finally had some resolution.
And he gave me an out-of-court settlement of £30,000 in damages and £7,500 in legal costs.
It's now 18 months since the court settlement, and it seems the sweet taste of victory has soured. While Mr. Ahmed paid the majority of the money owed to Helen in instalments, there was a dispute over interest, which Mr. Ahmed didn't believe he owed. Helen was having none of it.
So by this time I said, don't worry, I'm going to do this my way now, because I was just fuming. And by the end of that day, I had made the phone call and I had started the enforcement action.
With over £2,500 still owed to Helen, court sheriffs were instructed to collect the money.
I was away, and my friend across the road texted me that the High Court enforcement officers had arrived, and they were then manoeuvring their vehicle, and so that he could not get out of his driveway. They refused to move their vehicle and stated that if he didn't pay up, they would then seize, ready to auction, his vehicle. With that, he then paid the bill and they were able to go away and successfully finish my business.
Mr. Ahmed disputes some of this story. He says there was only one officer and his car was not blocked in. He did, however, pay up, and it's not the only progress Helen has made.
This all started about 5 or 6 weeks ago, so it's all quite new for us as well at the moment, and we're just still getting used to it.
Helen's insurers have repaired the damage caused to her house by her neighbour's build. Mr. Ahmed insists he was always going to do the rendering, but Helen scared his builders away. He says he was happy to pay her insurers for the work.
As you can see here, the wall now all blends into our porch. It looks a lot cleaner, the lines are a lot better, and it's made us all feel a lot better as well, that we're not looking at that awful breeze block anymore.
But on the other side of Mr. Ahmed, it's a different story. On 2 occasions, the cracks upstairs have been repaired by a builder who was chosen by the Martins and paid for by Mr. Ahmed. But they've recently come back again.
Having had it repaired and seeing them come back, it was like a nightmare again. So I'm just thinking, no, please don't come back.
We have been advised by Mr. Ahmed's agent, his surveyor, that they're only cosmetic cracks. But I'm not a structural engineer, so I'm not sure if it's sound, if the property next door isn't moving.
But because it's where the damage was occasioned, you just think it sets off alarm bells.
Mr. Ahmed says that as the Martins chose the builders to repair the cracks, it's them they should talk to. But the problems aren't just inside the Martins' house.
The loft is built on the party wall, but as you can see, the beam sticks out.
Mr. Ahmed insists that while the beam may still be sticking out, it is on his side of the party wall, something Tony disputes.
Both the party wall surveyors agreed that there was encroachment and it needed to be cut back, but it's still there 4 years on.
With Mr. Ahmed's build still awaiting final sign-off from the council, his neighbours are worried a whole new nightmare awaits them.
It could all land up that it's all going to have to be back into a building site again.
Still to come, Mr. Ahmed's neighbours make their feelings clear.
Don't put your shit up against my fence.
And in the Cotswolds, warring neighbours finally face each other in court.
I just didn't want to look at her. Full stop.
In a quiet Cotswolds village, a financial dispute between neighbours had suddenly turned physical.
And the horror that such a story could happen actually in Broadway.
Having driven her car at Richard Mayman, Helen Brown was now facing criminal charges. And in August 2014, the case was heard at Worcester Magistrates Court.
I arrived in the court and was led to the witness box. I was mindful not to show any weakness or nerves.
For the first time in months, Peter was face to face with the neighbour he'd once called a friend.
I was conscious of the fact that she was probably looking at me, and I really didn't want to give her the satisfaction of me looking at her. I just didn't want to look at her. Full stop.
After a 2-day court hearing, Helen Brown was found guilty of assault by beating. As well as receiving a criminal record, she was also ordered to pay £585 in fines and costs.
Without achieving the conviction, it would have been devastating to us. It would have just been another nail in the coffin.
But the victory in court has done little to heal the financial wounds.
In the overall scheme of things, we were still suffering the loss of our money.
The official receiver has been involved, and efforts are being made to recover some money for Robert's creditors. The Brown family home is for sale. However, it's unlikely the McSweeneys or Maymans will benefit.
Late fall, really, isn't it?
We were unsecured lenders of money, and the secured lenders always come first. So our situation looks particularly bleak.
Of the £120,000 loaned by the two families, Robert paid back just under £13,500 before bankruptcy. Although he's no longer registered as bankrupt, Robert hasn't paid any more money to the families.
We will be able to draw a line under all of this when we see the Browns depart, and not before.
In North London, the Martins and Helen Corlin are united in the anger they feel over their neighbour's extension.
For yourself and us, we haven't caused any of this.
No.
And we are just the victims.
Total victims in this. Make sure you are insured up to the hilt, because you never know what's going to happen next door to you.
At the front, the build appears finished. But at the back, an alleyway shared by several houses on the street is another thorny issue. Mr. Ahmed says he's already cleared any building debris that was blocking access for his neighbours. Tony disagrees.
There was some rubble taken away, but obviously he's left the bulk of it, and because we can't get to our garage and to our fence, this has just grown up.
Mr. Ahmed has told us his wife has recently cut the grass in front of Tony's garage, but the neighbour whose house backs onto Mr. Ahmed's has made his feelings about the rubble very clear.
He's put a very polite notice which makes it quite clear that he doesn't want the rubble or any more of Mr. Ahmed's rubbish leaning against his fence.
Don't put your S up against my fence, in 3 signs all the way along the fence, and I cannot blame them at all because they've had to incur all the costs and the rubble is still up against their new fence.
Surrounded by angry neighbours, Tony reckons Mr. Ahmed is now keeping a low profile.
About 2 months ago, I was taking my eldest daughter to hockey. It's about 7:30 at night. We come out, we just got in the car, and just as I was going to start the car, Mr. Ahmed pulled up in his Mercedes, saw that we was in our car, so therefore he reached over to his driver's glove compartment and literally laid across the car like that. So we sat in our car for 10 minutes. All the time he was laying across the front seat. Well, if that's not trying to avoid someone, I don't know what is.
Mr. Ahmed flatly denies hiding and says, why would he want to?
If it was funny, then I would laugh, but it's not. We are trying to get our property fixed.
Mr. Ahmed's build has yet to be signed off by building control, and until it is, some serious questions remain unanswered.
I'd like confirmation that their property is structurally sound. And that it wouldn't cause any more damage to our property. That everything's been done according to the rules and regulations, basically.
It's all in the hands of the council now and the building regulations. If they find it to be safe, I will be very, very surprised because I watched it go up.
If the council do find the property unsafe, Mr. Ahmed's neighbours could face many more months of noise, dirt and disruption.
I feel it will have to be demolished. I just don't know if we're going to be able to cope with the massive mess and the danger of coming down brick by brick.
A dark cloud continues to hang over Mr. Ahmed's neighbours.
To summarise how I feel at the moment, with no other work done, it makes me feel very, very angry, very annoyed, and very, very frustrated.
But in a final twist, there's a new building project in town. Only this time, it's Helen in charge. She's working with developers who are hoping to build a house on land at the bottom of her garden.
And I might actually be a raving lunatic to say that I want to do this, but I'd like to show how things can be done properly without upsetting everybody else in the road.
Have you been the victim of a nightmare neighbour? Or has your neighbour complained about your behaviour? If you'd like to tell us your story, go to channel5.com/nightmare neighbours.
Journalist Paul Connolly puts on his best suit to catch out those getting married to stay in the country. That's new sham wedding crashes tomorrow at 9. Next tonight, something suspicious in Docklands makes the officers call for backup and you can't pay. We'll take it away.
Loving thy neighbour is easier said than done.
The guy is a nasty piece of work.
Yes, they nearly got me arrested.
1 in 5 have been at war with next door.
I was frightened.
Really? Stay away from our peace alive. Give me my dog!
You bitch! I'm calling the police right now.
When the garden fence marks enemy lines,
Have you got your recorder on?
your home life can turn into a living hell.
What have you? What the hell's wrong with you?
Coming up,
He said to me, "You are racist."
when war breaks out,
He said there'd be trouble, big trouble.
What are you running away for?
some neighbours will use anything to lash out.
She's stabbing me! She's stabbing me!
But a sharp tongue
She said, "You've got cancer. You're going to die."
can cut twice as deep.
You bitch. You bitch.
The town of Ludlow in Shropshire seemed like the ideal place for Pauline Bruce and her husband Tony to move to after he retired in 2003.
The town is a very old country market town. It's so peaceful, so quiet, and that's what we look forward to in our retirement.
Their new home was in a retirement community of mobile homes on the outskirts of town.
The neighbours are all very friendly. There's no children allowed except visitors, so it was very, very peaceful.
Pauline's son John, from a previous marriage, also lives nearby.
I come see Mum a couple of times a week. She often sends me text messages needing bread, milk from the shop, so it's a good reason and a good excuse just to pop in and check on, see how she's doing.
2 years after moving in, Pauline and Tony got a new neighbour. Yvonne Ireland Evans moved in next door.
Our relationship with Yvonne started off very well. She was a very nice person. If she could help you in any way, she would. She used to knock the door and come in and have a cup of tea, and we became friends.
But things changed the following summer when Pauline and another neighbour joined forces to enter the community into the Heart of England gardening competition.
It was exciting because it brought people together on the park, but Yvonne wasn't involved in that.
And what should have been a happy occasion quickly turned sour.
Both Tony and I said hello to Yvonne, but she totally ignored us. And I said, what was the matter, Yvonne? I said, you haven't been speaking to us recently. And she said that because I'd got a new best friend, she didn't want to know us anymore. I thought that was a bit petty, really, because I didn't realise you were restricted to having just one friend in life.
Relations between the neighbours quickly deteriorated.
Tony and I started having silent phone calls. The phone would ring, and Tony used to sit here. He'd pick up the telephone, and by the time he got it to his ear, the phone at the other end had been put back down. So we used to dial 1471, and the caller had withheld their number. And then we started getting calls during the course of the night.
In the space of just a few weeks, Pauline and Tony received dozens of anonymous calls.
It unnerved us very much, and scary as well, because you don't know why people are making silent phone calls. You don't know who they are.
Pauline and Tony called the police, who advised them to ask the phone company to trace the calls.
They were traced back to Yvonne's landline, and the police officer came round to see us and said that he was going round to speak to her.
Yvonne was given a fixed penalty notice for making the calls and fined £80.
Obviously after that we thought the phone calls would stop, which they did, but all the silly little incidents didn't. Very often when Yvonne went past our home, she would invariably turn round and stick two fingers up at us. If she saw us coming in, she quite often opened the kitchen window and shouted abuse, calling both of us actually peeping toms and perverts. But she seemed to make sure most of the time there was nobody else about. So we got no witnesses.
Pauline claims this type of abuse went on for the next 4 years.
He got to a stage with Yvonne's behaviour. First thing in the morning, you'd sort of wake up and think, oh, I hope nothing happens today. You get a sick feeling in your stomach.
But soon, Pauline and Tony had a more serious fight on their hands.
In March 2011, Tony was diagnosed with terminal cancer. We'd got 3 to 6 months without treatment and 6 to 12 months with treatment.
It wasn't long before Yvonne found out about Tony's illness.
One occasion we came back from the hospital and she came down the path and stood in front of Tony and said, "You've got cancer, you're going to die," and then just walked off.
But when Pauline's son John decided to capture the abuse on camera, events took a more serious turn.
You're visiting here?
That's right.
Here. Look at you shaking! Look at you!
Coming up, one woman's daily diary of hell.
8:30 p.m. the two boys threw a ball over the fence.
And an elderly couple who find themselves on the wrong side of the law.
They nearly got me arrested. Yeah.
And put her in a cell. Would you believe? Put her in a cell.
Issues with next door can happen over the garden fence. But when your closest neighbours are on top of you, the slightest noise can feel like an invasion. In East London, 79-year-old Ellen Harris says she's been pushed to breaking point.
When you're going through, or what we've been going through, night after night, then the normal thing would be to get aggressive.
Ellen and Cyril Harris have lived in the same flat in Walthamstow, London for over 60 years.
A bit fresh out here today, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
We've got many friends around here, especially this first one on my left.
Ellen and Cyril have travelled all over the world, but they enjoy their biggest passion from the comfort of their armchairs.
We watch game shows and all detective things.
I like action films, war films.
And after having a bit of dinner, we watch TV for the rest of the evening, both fall asleep.
I don't fall asleep.
But after 60 years of relative peace, in 2008, their idyllic existence was interrupted when new neighbours, the El-Wakari family, moved in upstairs.
The first day they moved in, I went upstairs, went inside, about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, had quite a good conversation. It was very amiable.
But unlike the previous tenants who'd lived there, the El-Wakaris had young children.
We started to hear quite a bit of noise late at night. We could hear all the footsteps above, especially out here in our hallway.
And for Cyril and Ellen, home life became unbearable.
As soon as we put our TV on, then the child will come into the room and start.
Rolling balls over the laminated flooring. The move furniture and scrape it along the floor.
I mean, the child would jump with 2 feet quite often, bang something on the ceiling. And that's what we started to have to put up with.
May El-Wakari agreed to speak to us, but asked us to conceal her identity.
I moved in here. I only have my son, and he used to go to nursery and he used to go to school. He was hardly at home, and she used to make so much about his running around and doing things like that, but nothing like that ever happened.
But Ellen insists the noise was unbearable.
I went upstairs. The tenant stood at her front door. There was a small argument. Our voices got raised, and I turned away and said, I'm going to the council.
But Mrs. El-Wakari got to the council with her version of events first.
She did use a lot of racial words to my son and also family that were visiting.
The council responded to these allegations by sending Ellen a letter, warning her about her behaviour.
I can honestly say, put my hand on the Bible, and honestly say there's been nothing from us regarding raciality.
But Mrs. El-Wakari insists it wasn't the first time Ellen had made her opinions known.
Even before I viewed the property, she opened her house and said to me, all these foreigners moving to this country, Britain's not Britain anymore.
Ellen Harris says that she said no such thing, and when the Housing Association investigated, they couldn't prove it one way or the other, so the matter was dropped. But before long, there was a more heated exchange.
I came out here. I could hear the neighbour above me on his mobile phone talking very, very loudly. It was echoing all round the cul-de-sac, and it's 11:45 at night. So I just leaned out and I said, would you mind turning it down a bit, the noise? And that's when I was started to be abused. And he said to me, you're a racist, you're and if you don't go inside now, I'll come down and smash your face in.
The Al-Wakaris say that this simply never happened, and when she called the police, Ellen was told that with no proof there was nothing they could do.
I felt like going up there and doing something dangerously effective on these people for being like they were against my wife and being that it affected her so much.
Fresh allegations were to come, but it was 79-year-old Ellen who was to be accused.
She said, got me arrested. Yeah.
And put her in a cell, would you believe? Put her in a cell.
In Shropshire, Pauline and Tony Bruce's dreams of a peaceful retirement were shattered when their neighbour, Yvonne Ireland Evans, was fined for making nuisance phone calls to their home. Stories about the conflict between Pauline and Yvonne quickly spread through the park.
According to Yvonne, we were the ones victimising her. She said that we used to watch her, we used to shout things at her.
For Pauline's son John, this was the final straw. Because the retirement park only allows people over 50 to live there, John was only ever a daily visitor. But despite this, he took it upon himself to take action.
I sent her an anonymous letter, basically just saying, back the hell away. I will warn you now, leave it be. Nobody believes the things you say, which I find tragically sad. But only you are to blame, Yvonne. Harassment is a serious offence, punishable by prison. Would you like to go there?
Yvonne reported John to the police for harassment, but her evidence wasn't enough to bring any charges against him.
I guess I was, not desperate, but I just wanted it to stop.
John wanted to prove that his parents were the real victims, so began using his camera to record Yvonne's behaviour. And one day in the garden, the situation turned ugly.
I was pottering around in the garden here. She was either side of her fence.
Have you got your recorder on?
Yeah, I have.
Good. Because you're visiting here.
That's right.
Here.
And she started spreading her mouth off about Tony having cancer.
Oh dear. Guess who's got cancer? And guess who's got terminal cancer?
She had a approximately 4 foot long branch.
Go on, have another swipe, have another swipe. Go on. Go on then. Go on. Huh?
Come on then.
Well, come on then.
What are you running away for? Hey?
Ooh.
What are you running away for?
I wasn't instigating, I didn't taunt her. I did step closer. I'd seen that she'd got a weapon, a branch in her hand.
John showed his video to the police, and Yvonne was made to sign a community resolution, preventing her from making any further contact with Pauline, Tony, or John.
I was glad that A, she signed it, and B, that she'd understood the actions to be taken, but things did not quieten down. Within 2 days, the second bout of nuisance phone calls had started.
Over the next 2 months, Pauline and Tony were bombarded with yet more anonymous calls.
Tony was terminally ill with cancer. So of course, you have precious time left together, and to have that spoiled by someone making unnecessary phone calls to you, it just made things worse.
Once again, the calls were traced back to Yvonne. She was charged with harassment, pleaded guilty in court, and fined £100.
Why do it when you know Tony's dying? Why cause us this much hassle? Why do it?
In February 2012, less than a year after his diagnosis, Tony lost his battle with cancer. Pauline hoped Yvonne would allow her to grieve in peace.
Unfortunately, she didn't seem to bother me so much. She turned her attention to John.
And before long, the battle between Yvonne and John would spiral completely out of control.
Your dog just attacked my dog. I got it on video. Hey, give me my dog.
18:36 hours, Mr. D with the two boys threw a ball over the fence and ran indoors. Friday the 6th.
Not everyone uses a camera to record their neighbourly disputes.
2014, 29th to the 7th, 2014, 82 boys threw a ball over the fence.
38-year-old Kim Aman and her mum Mary keep a diary to log complaints about the family next door.
At 8 a.m. Both parents were in the garden. They knew what they did, from the noise level to the harassment. Every day is a living hell. You just don't know what you're waking up to.
Where is that coming from?
That's coming from Mr. Deaver's house. That's the type of noise we have to put up with.
When Kim and her mum Mary were looking for a new home in 2012, they fell in love with a house on this quiet suburban street in East London.
This is our living room. This is my mum. Hello. Do you want a tea? All right. Living with my mum, yeah, it's not too bad. She's easy to get on with. She likes to laugh, likes to joke. She does her things, I do my things. There is no rules, there is no curfew. That was when I was younger.
The house seemed like all they could ever want.
When we first moved in, it had a really nice kind of warm atmosphere to the place. My mum, she was like, oh, it's a garden that I can kind of use, maintain, most of all turn it into something.
But just a few months after moving in, Kim heard that her next-door neighbours, the Deaver family, had spent the last 2 years trying to get planning permission for a rear extension. Fearing that any building work could disrupt their peace and quiet, Kim wanted details.
Me and my mum went over to the fence and approached Mr. Deaver. Mr. Deaver said it's going to be quite a big extension. He said, I want to take you all down and your fence down. At that point, my mum turned around and said, you can't do that because it's council property. And he said, I can do it. He said, even if I don't get permission, I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway.
Salahdin Deaver was seeking permission from the council to build a 2-storey extension. But Kim and Mary were worried that by taking the fence down and building along the boundary line, it would encroach into their garden.
I think he just thinks the garden's his, basically. Because he owns his property, he seems to think he's entitled to take other people's boundaries.
Kim and Mary wrote to the council, lodging an official objection to the new extension, and began garden plans of their own, in the form of a memorial to a beloved family member.
My mum created a small flower bed, which contains a little wheelbarrow, which is in memory of our previous dog, Candy. And unfortunately, we lost her at the age of 6 and then she passed away. Just to remember her, really.
But Kim and Mary's hopes of enjoying their new garden didn't last long.
February the 6th, 2014, the two boys threw a ball over the fence. As I come out in my garden, I noticed there's a football landed roughly round about here. Walking back down the garden, another ball come over and it landed just here. Obviously we did give them back, but there was so many coming over that the balls began to become a nuisance.
By objecting to their extension plans, Kim thinks she had accidentally started a war with her neighbours.
It's intimidation, really. It kind of feels like, well, because we can't have what we want, we're going to make your lives hell. He did speak to us on 2 occasions and said obviously he'd try and speak to his children. To my knowledge, Mr. Deaver did speak to his children, but obviously the balls didn't stop coming over. It got worse and worse. Sunday the 20th, Mr. Deaver's son had 4 new balls and they were told by Mr. Deaver to keep bouncing them all the time. Mr. Deaver's children seemed to think that the fence was a football goal, so it was constantly kicking the ball at the fence more or less all day if they were in the garden. It was a constant boom boom, boom boom, and with quite a force, as if like they were kicking it to try and break the fence. March the 15th, 3:20 p.m, a white stick was thrown over the fence. I took a photo of it. It was driving us insane.
Kim and Mary called the council to complain.
Originally there was a 4-foot fence which used to come up to about here, but as you can see now there's a 6-foot fence being put in place by the local council hoping to basically improve relations between myself and Mr. Diva.
They also advised her to keep hold of any more objects that came over the fence. But this simple suggestion would have dramatic consequences.
He said, you've been swearing at my kids, and if I catch you swearing at my kids once more, he said, I swear, he said, I'll get someone to do you over. I won't be doing it, someone else will be doing it.
Coming up, Ellen Harris fights fire with fire.
That's the only thing I can think of, the only thing we can do to retaliate.
And in the retirement park,
You don't give me my dog!
all hell breaks loose.
I was frightened for our lives.
When the Al-Wakari family moved into the flat above Ellen and Cyril Harris in East London, their young children were immediately accused of being too noisy.
Very loud, isn't it?
Disgusting, isn't it? Yeah.
But May Al-Wakari claims her family were victims of racial abuse.
After I told her where I'm from, she said to me, all these foreigners moving to this country, Britain's not Britain anymore.
He said to me, you're a racist witch, and if you don't go inside now, I'll come down and smash your face in.
By 2012, the two women lost patience with each other.
As I was coming in my front door, the lady above was standing on the banister. She said to me, you're a witch and I hope you die.
But Mrs. Al-Wakari had an entirely different story.
5 policemen turned up, and the 2 that came in here said that I'd called them a racial comment.
They was going to arrest her.
Yeah,
And
they
put
nearly
her
got
in
me
a cell,
arrested.
would you believe? Put her in a cell.
But he said, Mrs. Harris, it's 11 o'clock at night. You're 79 years of age, and we are not going to put you in a cell at this time of night. And that was the end of that.
Ellen had escaped a night in the cells. But she claims the continued noise from the flat above wasn't much of a consolation.
What's that?
See, I want to sit there.
Oh.
Ellen and Cyril were desperate to prove they were the victims. So, using recording devices provided by the Housing Association, they tried to monitor the noise coming through the ceiling.
At one time we had 5 hours, would you believe, on the tape, and they said there was nothing much on there.
It's got to be at least 90 decibels before they can accept that you are putting up with noise.
To me, it would be like a band in a hall, 90 decibels.
Which is ridiculous.
With the noise monitors failing to prove anything, for Ellen and Cyril, home life was becoming unbearable.
It's got to affect your nerves, and that's what it did to me. You don't want to eat, and I'm slim enough as it is. I've always been tiny, so I actually went down to 5 stone in weight.
Plus at one time, my wife said to me, she said, I've had enough. She said, I want to die.
I did.
And it broke my heart to see my wife going through this because of these people.
I can only, in my heart, think that they are deliberately trying to stop us from having any enjoyment.
It's all just made up, really. It was very quiet. I hardly ever, would make a sound.
Ellen Harris was by now the highest volume caller to her local police station.
Since all the trouble started, I must have called the police at least 100 times.
No one wants the police knocking on their door every day. Sometimes they just come when my kids are fast asleep. It really is affecting me.
As a result of her constant complaints, Ellen was issued with a harassment warning. But she soon took matters into her own hands.
It gets to the stage when you think to yourself, why should we have to live like this?
But Ellen wasn't the only one feeling helpless. In Ludlow, Pauline Bruce's son John had been granted permission by the retirement park owner to move in with his mom temporarily, following the death of his stepfather Tony. And to ensure his mother could grieve in peace, John kept a close eye on Yvonne next door.
I was hoping that maybe a little more presence and vigilance on my behalf would quieten her down.
Can you see all right?
Can you see okay?
Right. It didn't work. I think actually I might have antagonized the situation.
John soon found himself directly in the line of fire.
As soon as I walked through that back gate, she'd be waiting somewhere.
You know you're a wanker. Got no money to hold your hand today.
She'd call me Mama's boy, queer boy.
Mummy's little boy had to get his own tea today.
She would literally shout over the fence, "Every time the dogs go woof, it reminds me he's a puff." This is tragic because I'm heterosexual.
One summer afternoon, while Pauline was with family in the lounge, John heard more singing coming from over the garden fence, so set his camera rolling.
I heard this crash bang, and Scrappy was in the jaws of a pretty big dog.
Mom! The dog, Mom! Mom! The dog just attacked Scrappy!
In the meantime, Yvonne had come through the fence with a pair of secateurs.
Stop! Oh, get out of my garden!
And I think my aunt was one of the first ones out the door.
Your dog just attacked my dog. I got it on video.
Hey, don't be my dog!
And that's when it all started.
Get it on video!
She lashed out a couple of times at me. She brought up the pair of secateurs. It missed my throat by about an inch.
Careful!
I was frightened. I think I was frightened for our lives.
I want my dog! You'll get your dog! You'll get your dog! You don't give me my dog!
A couple of people took a bit of a battering.
You're trespassing! Your dog attacked my dog! Your dog attacked my dog!
I'm not saying
You're not responsible, you know?
Go!
She's stabbing me! Hey, open the door! She's stabbing me with secateurs! Open the door, let's go!
Although John wasn't stabbed, he was shaken by the incident.
It got a little hairy. Then, one form or another, we managed just to get her out, get the dog out, and close the door after us.
You okay? Oh, no. The dog jumped over and attacked my dog. I've got it all on video. Get the police here now.
So I managed to ring the police.
You can look at that.
And I was crying talking to the telephony.
6 years.
Well, I dread to think what she could have done.
Yvonne later told police she was acting in self-defence and they chose not to pursue the case any further. But Pauline and John refused to give up, so showed their video to the owner of the retirement park.
He had no choice, so eviction proceedings were started.
Citing Yvonne's nuisance phone calls and John's video evidence, together with complaints from other residents, Yvonne was served an eviction notice. After 6 years, Pauline thought her nightmare was finally coming to an end. But Yvonne had other ideas.
Get off the park!
Not all neighbour disputes get violent. For some, the war between neighbours becomes more psychological.
8:30 p.m, the two boys threw a ball over the fence.
Just months after moving into their new home, Kim Aman and her mum Mary had started to write exhaustive diaries, logging each noise nuisance from their neighbours, the Diva family.
21st of the 7th, Dave boys bouncing balls against the wall.
Kim claims it all started when she opposed their plans for an extension.
Life was like living a nightmare as hell.
And according to Kim, the noise soon spilled from the garden to inside the house.
One Saturday night, all of a sudden there was a noise from next door. It started off with the kids screaming at the top of their voices. What followed after that was like either weightlifting bars or some kind of metal poles, literally with a thump, as if they were picking them up and just dropping them. And then the next thing we heard was like a thump against the wall, as if they were banging the poles against the wall. It was as if they were in a playground. That's what it sounded like.
Kim claims she confronted Salahuddin Diva about his children's behaviour.
He laughed at us and said kids will be kids, which fair enough they can be, but to a certain extent this isn't kids being kids.
Despite this, Kim wasn't happy to accept Mr. Diva's claim. She is convinced they were deliberately trying to antagonise her.
Mr. Diva's son had come into our garden, obviously asking for his football back.
Kim refused to hand the ball back.
At that point, Mr. Diva's son turned around and called me a cow. Mr. Diva then approached me by calling me, demanding me to go up to him. He said, if you continue swearing at my children, I swear there'll be trouble, big trouble, and I'll get you done over and it won't be me doing it. I felt scared. I felt intimidated, frightened. So I went in, I dialed 999.
We contacted Mr. Diva for his version of events, and he didn't respond. But the police did speak to him and decided not to pursue Kim's complaint. Instead, they invited Kim to meet with them and council officials to put an end to the problems.
The meeting took place. We still weren't given a fair hearing. No one even wanted to listen to our points of view. The local authority, and probably I'll say more so the police and the antisocial behaviour team, are more implying that it's me and my mum myself which are causing the antisocial behaviour, which is currently not true. I got wound up, upset, I ended up walking out.
We asked the police to comment on the ongoing dispute, and they said that there is no evidence to suggest that either party is more culpable than the other. Kim, however, convinced she is being harassed by Mr. Diva, has taken it to the next level.
I felt as if the local police weren't going to help me, then I'd try to help myself by taking an injunction out against Mr. Diva.
And while waiting for a court hearing to stop the alleged harassment from Mr. Diva, his building plans were approved.
From the plans, Mr. Diva intends to do quite a big extension with a long conservatory in the back garden, but he would like to bring his extension just over the boundary.
But according to that, he will just be building where his fence is rather than coming over this side.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's correct, obviously there.
All that would change is that your fence would turn from a wooden fence to just a brick wall.
That's correct. That Mr. Diva obviously would be building a brick wall, but it would be loss of light, closure, and it felt like we'd be living in a prison.
Since filming, Kim has been fighting to win the injunction against Mr. Diva. But despite this, Kim and Mary have decided it's time to move on.
My mum's nearly 70 now, so she doesn't need it. She's retired from work. She wants a peaceful life, basically. So we're in the process of hopefully moving.
Coming up, bad blood boils over in Walthamstow.
You're a bitch! You're using your children's weapons against us!
And it's demolition day in Ludlow.
Rip down the fence, rip down the shed, rip down everywhere.
In Walthamstow, after 6 years of complaining about the Al-Wakari family making too much noise, Ellen and Cyril Harris fought back by banging on a cupboard in the stairwell.
That's the only thing we can do to retaliate.
She would come out every day and she would do it late at night, and that was just really disturbing everyone.
And one day in August 2014, tensions erupted in explosive fashion.
The noise carried on quite bad, so I got my stick and I come out here and I banged on this cupboard door.
It's all started with her banging again. no reason, out of nowhere.
Next thing, the resident came down the stairs, took my photo, and said, "I'm calling the police and I'm taking you to court." I was a bit shocked, but I had enough time just to say to her, "You bitch, you bitch." And that's the first time I've ever used any swear words at all.
May El-Wakri was in fact filming Ellen on her mobile phone that night. She has released the following footage to us.
You're a bitch! Okay. Do you think your film is weapons against us? Okay. Yeah, you bitch! I'm calling the police right now and I'm holding this video and I will take you to court. Yeah! You're trying to scare my kids. Watch.
I feel like harassed by her since the day I moved in here.
2 days later, a letter arrived from the council accusing Ellen of making threats of physical assault.
I didn't threaten her at all with my stick, and there was no way I was going, no way to attack her. Nothing in my head and nothing in my mind to attack her at all.
The couple were threatened with eviction and summoned to a meeting with the council and police.
A form was produced by a tenancy officer, and we were asked to sign it.
It was an acceptable behaviour agreement, banning them from causing alarm, distress or harassment to others, more commonly given to teenagers.
We were very unhappy with the clauses in it and the way it referred to us, just as though once again as we were the perpetrators and the people upstairs above us were the victims.
It's like a living nightmare, really. I've just had enough of it. I honestly don't see that she'll ever stop doing what she's doing.
Every time I turn the corner to come into the cul-de-sac, I hate it. I hate living here at the moment. If it wasn't for my husband, I wouldn't be here. Our council have said, well, why don't you, Mr. Harris, move?
I'm 88, I've got a pacemaker, and I live from day to day, and I certainly ain't going to move now in this position. Now, that's final.
Since filming finished, Ellen was called into the local police station. After being questioned for 6 hours and having photographs and fingerprints taken, she was cautioned under the Public Order Act for causing fear, provocation or violence, and warned she will appear in court if she continues to harass her neighbour. In Ludlow, Yvonne Ireland Evans was evicted by her landlord and given 8 weeks to leave. But there was to be no last-minute truce between the warring neighbours.
Life was like nothing had changed. She was still nasty.
Late one evening, while Pauline was having dinner with friends at the hotel nearby, John arrived at the house and spotted something strange.
You can see it from here. There she is. I looked up towards Mom's house and I could see somebody with a flashlight. So I had a camera with me, turned the camera on, started videoing. With the camera still rolling, I made my way up the path, got to about here. Why are you flashing lights around Mom's house?
I'm not flashing a light.
And the next minute, Yvonne came around. Do you think it's time you guys went?
Is it time you went?
Really? Really? She started to hit me. The camera was still rolling. I backed away a bit. Are you serious?
Get off the park.
Oh dear.
I'll give you all to chucking stones at my window.
Oh dear. You're dreaming.
No.
And then I just left the car, left the scene, walked down, walked back around to the hotel, and told my mum that I'd just been assaulted.
Even though Yvonne had been served with eviction, she refused to go quietly.
In the end, the bailiffs came.
Yeah, 12 months ago today.
Yes.
And saw her off the park. Still making comments towards the owner because he was here as well.
Yes.
And she's not allowed back on the park.
And when the owner of the park decided to knock down Yvonne's old home, John jumped at the chance to offer a helping hand.
Ripped down the fence, ripped down the shed, ripped down everywhere. where she used to hide and photograph us and harass us.
Each piece taken down was a piece of her being taken away from us. And I've got to be honest, I'm not sorry that she's gone. I have a much more peaceful life now. I'm starting to grieve for Tony more. I miss him terribly and just so sorry he wasn't here to see the day that she went.
But after nearly 7 years of hell, and with the prospect of a new home being built next door, Pauline finally feels she can begin to look forward to the future.
At the beginning of next year, I will be getting some new neighbours, and I pray to God that they will be nice neighbours and not neighbours from hell.
Have you got a nightmare neighbour story? Get in touch at channel5.com/nightmare neighbour. Next time, parking wars lead to violence and arrest.
What, me? I said I thought, well, I'm under arrest.
Old friends become deadly enemies.
Pulled out of me and started swinging it.
And an attack with a hose pipe.
The water just hit me straight in the face. I just can't win.
If you missed last week's episode, just head over to 5-Star now for more Nightmare Neighbour Next Door. Next, right here on Channel 5, we're taking a look behind the headlines at one of the world's most beloved comedians in new Autopsy, The Last Hours of Robin Williams.